Good afternoon. I just want to talk about two and a half of the five things that from our assignment. Anti-intellectualism is out of touch concerns with everyday life. And as Christians, that's how we see things are going on today. We see that the world is telling our people, our Christians, our brothers and sisters in Christ that, hey, it feels good for you to do this way. Don't worry about the Christian way. Well, I want to talk about two of the five things, like I said, well, two and a half of the five things today. And I'm picking these because in my ministry, I have like a threefold thing that I believe in. You got to have to establish a relationship, which means that's how we can be a witness. That's how we can be bold. You get that relationship with somebody. And then being mission-minded, of course, which means going out doing what God has called us to do. And then evangelizing, which is pretty much speaking the truth, speaking the gospel of Jesus. So in Romans 12:1-2, it says, we have to renew our mind. Of course, our mind is the control of everything that we do. It starts here, goes here, into our feet so that we can go. But the way that we can do that is simple. You can pray, study, and prepare. That's the three things that we need to do so that we can be bold, so that we can do what we need to do. And to be mission-minded, we need to go back to Acts 1:8, where it talks about Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. Well, when you talk about Jerusalem, that's your family. You know, what do they say? Family's one of the hardest things that we can witness to, one of the hardest people that we can witness to. Well, Judea, that's our local missions. That's people across the street from your church. That's the people next door. That's the people at the stores. That's the people at work, school, whatever. That's the local. But the big one is kind of getting out of the way today is Samaria. And that's the world. Jesus has called us to go into the world, and we need to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So to be mission-minded, we need to do those three things. So let's get to the irrelevant gospel. There's no more feel-good witnessing. There's no way that we can say, hey, it's okay. Just take your time. No. Galatians 2:20 says, crucify with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Well, when Jesus was on this earth, he was bold. He told people, hey, you need to be saved. Let me show you. The disciples that followed him, they left everything and followed Jesus. Well, that's what we need to do. We need to be bold. We need to tell, no more feeling good about stuff. No more watering down the gospel per se. Because Paul tells us to be like Christ. There's no more feel good. You got to water down God, but the true gospel. We can't be preaching the watered down gospel anymore. There's no such thing. Okay? When our mind is right, it is no more feeling good, but dying to our old self and living in union with Jesus. Well, that's going back to where I said earlier, to die for Jesus. We got to be just like Jesus. We have to be bold. We have to stand strong, stand firm, and do the things that we need to do for Jesus. Now, I want you to understand this part. Can't tell people that say, hey, this is how the world says for me to have it this way. This ain't Burger King, folks. You can't have it your way and live you cannot sit on the fence. You can't live in the world and say you're like Christ. It's one or the other, because what does the Bible say? You're lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. Wow. Tell me that's not bold. You have to say yes or no to Jesus. There's no living in the world. You have to be just like him, because he tells us in his word, the world persecutes me, they will persecute you as well. So we got to be just like him. Now let's go to this. Acts chapter 2. That's when the church started. Acts chapter 2 is when the church started, the New Testament church. It tells us that over 3,000 people were added. You know what they did? All right, let's just sit in the church. Let's let Paul and all the disciples go out and witness. They didn't. They went out. That tells me they went out, became the church, not the inside building church. They went outside the four walls and became the real church. And that's what we have to do, guys. That's how we have to live. That's how we have to say, hey, all right, let's go. So when we transform our minds and start being bold, no one can stop the gospel from being told. Hey, it just takes one person to say, hey, I'm going to stand up and do this right. That's for everybody to do. That's how all people need to do that. We all need to say, hey, let's go. Let's go. Matthew 4:19 says, this is Jesus. This is Jesus saying this. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Wow. And what did they do? They dropped everything they had because he called Peter, James, John, Andrew. They are all fishermen. They dropped their nets. So I want you to think about what a fisher's net is. When they throw the nets into the water, think of how tight those strings are on that net to bring up all those fish. Well, that's what Jesus has called us to do. Go be fishers of men. Catch them. Bring them to me. Something that I like to talk about is, guess what? The earliest symbol of Christianity wasn't the cross. That came much, much later. The symbol of the fish was the earliest symbol of Christianity. Why? Because Christ was the fisherman of men's souls. When we cleanse and transform our minds with prayer, studying, and preparing, we can take the stand to lift up missions, teach the Bible, and be bold about it. That's what we have to do, because Matthew 10:33 says this, whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven. I tell you what, when I get to heaven, I'm ready to go. I want to go in. So I'm going to be bold. I'm going to stand up. So listen to this. Our minds control our whole body. So let's go and be the hands and feet of Jesus. Let's go out every day, ready to work. Put that armor on. Pray, study, get in the Word, and prepare for the fight. Hey, when you look out your window at your home, that's not a playground. That's the Christ battlefield. That's the battlefield that we have to go through every day. I hope you enjoyed this. God bless you, and have an awesome day.